Wargames Atlantic just released new Chosun Dynasty Korean STLs, which is frankly incredible because who thought that there'd be new Chosun Dynasty models from any company. But these are STLs, they're easily accessible, they can be printed anywhere as long as you have a printer, and they're pretty great sculpts, they're historically accurate and everything. So let's examine these sculpts and see how they go. Wargames Atlantic Chosun Koreans. How truly unexpected. Who knew someone would actually make models depicting the Chosun army? Wow. When contemplating the angle to address these miniatures, I first thought of the word miracle. A miracle has occurred. Miracles are by definition rare things. Stephen Bradbury's Olympic gold medal win at the 2002 Salt Lake City Games, when everyone else fell over and became entangled, allowing him to sail over the finish line, fits the definition of a miracle. Of course, one man's miracle is another man's bullshit. Those guys who had fallen over would not have seen it as a miracle. But they are wrong. We have found the Messiah, and they are called Wargames Atlantic. In the course of my contemplations, I also settled upon another concept. That of Baals. The metaphor and ideogram of the testicles being the seat of courage has supplanted the heart as a symbol for bravery. Conflict is within the nature of narrative, and as we shift from the classics of man versus nature and man versus man, we must settle upon more abstract postmodern struggles. Man versus himself, man versus capitalism. In the struggle within a capitalist reality, where everything is framed within a quantitative monetary value, it is brave to struggle against the laws and constructs of reality. Making the Chosun Koreans a niche subject matter within the niche hobby of miniature wargaming invites desolation and doom. What hope is there of a net positive return? The risk of this being unpopular is very high, given the Chosun Korean army is not visible for English speakers in English pop culture, and the product could be dead on arrival. This risks the profit margin of the company, which is the purpose of its existence. This takes balls. A final thought crossed the recesses of my mind. That this was weird. We can phrase this more nicely. It could be unconventional. It could be creative. But speaking frankly, who would dare to make Chosun Koreans? No one knows who they are outside of Korea. You need the Imjin War and the popular appeal of the samurai just to bring the Chosun Koreans into something vaguely resembling Western interest. And that's only from being samurai adjacent. Wargames Atlantic deciding to make 6 units in a row is frankly bizarre. It's good, I'll definitely take it, and I'm probably looking the gift horse in the mouth, but just why? It's such a random topic outside of the typical wargaming subjects. How did we Chosun enjoyers get so lucky? That said, Wargames Atlantic have depicted many strange wargaming subjects based on their monthly subscription model, which probably makes obscure subjects easier to sell, as a set number of sales every month is guaranteed by certain subscriber tiers. So in summary, it's a miracle that Wargames Atlantic had the balls to be this weird. Now, I could sit here all day describing how thankful I am, as if this was some kind of weird BDSM production, but I think we would all like to move on, myself included. That's for the next video, 6-hour long, praying ASMR. My own Chosun army is in 1/72nd scale, so the company I rely on is Redbox. Now, Small Miniatures released some Chosun Korean sculpts before, but bluntly, they're not historically accurate. They recycle some samurai armor, and the general detail and dynamism and human proportions, frankly, are lacking. I still bought them though. That's how few options there were before Wargames Atlantic. However, 3D printing has truly expanded my possibilities, and the possibilities of all wargamers. I truly think 3D printing is the best future for wargaming. As files can be adjusted, scale is no longer an issue. Shipping fees are no issue. You can print in the comfort of your own home, regardless of where you are. But what about the Wargames Atlantic sculpts themselves? How are they? They're good, thank you for asking. Wargames Atlantic make the effort to listen to their customers. They're like the therapists that you can't afford. They respond on social media and even consider making models you give them suggestions for. They have community polls to see support for speculative new releases and then make the popular ones. The first Chosun Korean models I saw were the Chosun Guard Unarmored Archers, originally titled the Chosun Unarmored Archers. Now, when I first saw this, I was like, oh my god, do mine eyes deceive me? We have new Chosun models. I was overwhelmed by sheer emotion. I had been waiting for years, and my hope for Chosun models had dwindled to a dying flame. But then it came roaring back with sheer incredulity. I have been working on my Chosun Korean army for months, and now the great work could continue. Seeing these models was both a confirmation of purpose and the excitement of innovative new product. But as the enthusiasm settled into analysis, I realized they had made a grave error. The models were historically inaccurate. How could they be used now? We all know that models need 100% historical accuracy or they should be burned in the microwave for their crimes of existence. There was only one solution: complain on the internet. Their collars are bang lyung, which translates to square-shaped low neckline collar, which is the collar type on their pan, p. Square collars on pan, p make it military clothing for high-class military officers, such as the Sumunjang, a chief gatekeeper in the Royal Guard, but it was not worn en masse by whole units. The depiction of the whole unit being equipped with a commander's clothing that was ceremonial and not used for combat makes the usability of these models limited for historical reenactments. The gats, however, are specific to the chi, ta, de from mid-Chosun, which are musicians. In fact, the gats are accurate, but they're worn in the wrong way. The side feathers should be over the ears, so if everyone's gat could be shifted to the left by about 90 degrees, that would be great. So this whole unit is a band of Royal Guard musicians wearing the wrong clothing who have bows for some reason. But most heinous of all, the belts are too thin. Broad cloth belts were the norm, and even when tiny belts were worn, they had a broad base beneath. How can I play my games if the belts are too thin? Huh? What am I gonna do? I guess you could interpret the belts as thicker, but the folds are hiding its true size. Okay, to be honest, I don't think they look that thin. I think it'd be nice if they were a little thicker, but this is probably a minor quibble. This set has the least amount of options other than the Hwacha set. You get Chosun Guard gats with the feathers or without the feathers, and you get quivers but no sword scabbards. In my opinion, this therefore makes this the least impressive set, so it's all uphill from here. Also, why do they have double sets of buttons? A positive of this unit is it provides a clothing option that has never been found in miniature form, full stop. If you ever need to make a very specific commander in ceremonial garb, there it is, but you're gonna have to convert the head. If you ever need musician hats worn the wrong way, there they are, and you could easily convert them so they're worn the right way. So a positive is, it's a very niche model that probably would never have been made if not for mistakes made in research. So that's nice in a way. Now look at these Chosun in Tujeonggap armor. Magnificent. Great dynamic sculpts and historically accurate. I think these are the first model depictions of two-piece Brigandine for the Chosun Koreans ever. Perry Miniatures didn't do them. Redbox didn't do them. Wargames Atlantic have given us the less common variant of Brigandine that nevertheless still existed by the time of the Imjin War. They even give us variants without the underarm auxiliary armor, which is nice to have more options, if a little dangerous for the wearer. I do wonder why they decided to go with the uncommon two-piece design that was more common in early Chosun, but they're providing an unprecedented armor option in miniature form, so I'm ultimately happy. The models themselves are well rendered, with sharp detail. The poses are all the same static, steady, advancing bodies, which is a little uninspired, but fine. The head options are fantastic. You have the funnel-shaped helmet, called the gan-Ju, the most common kettle helmet, cheom-ju, and the brimless helmet, called wan-ju. And you get bare heads with the Korean top knot. You get Wol-Do glaives, swords, bows, quivers, and sword scabbards. But the thing I like the most is the raised dragon design on the shields. I've been freehanding them before, and that took days. This will speed things up considerably and make them far easier to paint. There are some minor quibbles. The tall trident filial should be late Chosun rather than mid Chosun, and this two-piece Brigandine is more indicative of mid Chosun, but this is obscure information and very minor, so it's not a big deal. The belts are again too small. They should at least have a broader cloth base. But overall, this fills an armor-shaped hole in Chosun model ranges with detailed, diverse sculpts. They are truly marvelous. Well, butter my biscuits. The Chosan Warriors in scale armor, or jeon-bok, which is actually lamellar armor, are even more fantastic than the Brigandine. How do we keep up with such excellence? They do acknowledge that the armor is scales bound together in lamellar. So why not just call it lamellar like everyone else? I don't know. Look at the beauty of these lamellar lames. The rope work at the top and bottom of each one is exquisite. The popping out of the neck guard, the shoulder pads, the way the lames pop out of the surface on the front are great details. These are very well sculpted, which make them a nightmare to paint. I can see that this set has a new 8-plate helmet option, as well as some kettle helmets, all without tassels. This is a reduction from the prior jeon-bok set, which had many more options. The weapon options are good. You don't get the bow and quivers that the Brigandine set provides, but you get one more glaive variation than the Brigandine set. You also get sword scabbards. The sculpted dragon shield is the same as the one in the Chosun in jeon-bok armor. The poses are static and merely standing or slowly advancing, which is a little limiting. I was confused by what I believed to be a quilted undercoat beneath the armor, but now I believe it is leather edging on the lamellar. It looks quilted, but it looks like the sculptor either misunderstood the lucky coin motif embroidery pattern, or they were going for this pattern. I guess this is fine. Historically, they probably should have leather edgings plus tassels rather than fur, as multiple Ming Dynasty paintings show tassels, and Korean armors were strongly modeled on the Ming. But we do not have definitive evidence to say if the edgings end in tassels or fur, and different artists have different interpretations. So this is fine. The helmets don't have tassels, which is odd, but the Brigandine set has tassels. So maybe this was to create helmet variety. It seems like they've designed the lamellar aventail on the helmets to be attached to the collar rather than the helmet itself, which is strange. But let's just pretend it's attached to the helmet, and it's fine. Just ignore it, it's fine. The belts are still problematic. The Chosun Hacha and crew are great models. Now, Perry Miniatures and Small Miniatures already made decent Hacha, so this is one of the few times that the Wargames Atlantic Koreans aren't complete innovations, like the wargaming equivalent of the wheel or fire or something. However, they're still solid models. The war machine itself is nice. It's not particularly detailed or decorated, but it's good. It's everything you expect and need. The crew have the problem of having the same clothing as the guard unarmored archers, which means they are historically inaccurate. But the poses for the crew are fine. You have someone carrying the reloads, someone standing around pretending to work, and someone pointing at the enemy, gripping his scabbard. Now, that's a command pose with potential. This leader figure is wearing the same Brigandine as a jeon-bok armor set, but the guy points, and that's just invaluable as a wargamer who doesn't have the social skills necessary to play the game. Now, those models were released in October, and what a fruitful October it was. But little did I know that a Christmas present would be inbound, and the Chosun Koreans would be getting 2 new releases in December. It seems that Wargames Atlantic are determined to recreate the whole army range by themselves. Their courage and lack of financial sense truly know no bounds. The Chosan Warriors in chainmail, or Chue, Cha, Kap, are a joy of wonderfully created options. Chainmail was considered a lower tier of armor, and early to mid Chosun regulations stated that conscripts should be equipped with them. Now the models themselves have quality, like the rest of the Chosun range. The faces are expressive. The proportions are accurate. The chainmail links look a little large, but that could be a stylistic choice to make them look more visible on the battlefield. The poses are the same steady advancing poses as the previous sets. However, where this set stands out is in the options. Firstly, they have a set of alternative bodies, which are quite different. The Tujonggap set had alternative bodies, but the only difference was a lack of underarm armor, which is not a large visual difference. The alternative bodies here are wearing jeon-bok, which became standard military wear near the end of the 17th century, after the Imjin War. So these bodies are best either representing late Chosun, but chainmail also began to be phased out in late Chosun as gunpowder weapons became more commonplace. Ergo, the best use of these jeon-bok wearing bodies is the transition period to late Chosun, when the military was being reformed just after the Imjin War. Luckily, the bodies only wearing chainmail can be used throughout all of early to mid Chosun. It's still nice that there's options, but it's a little weird that the options combine early and late Chosun emblems. But anyway, there are more options! We have new shield options in this set. The rectangular dragon face shield and the rattan shield, also with a tiny dragon face. Both shields were used in mid Chosun, and the rattan shield gained prominence in late Chosun. While this set does not have bow and quiver options, it does provide new spear arms and the hang, pa, trident arms, both at rest and thrusting. There are 2 designs of long spears included and 1 short spear. There are arms that wield shields normally, but also a new arm that rests its hand atop the top of the rectangular shield. There's still swords and glaives. There are sword scabbards. Wow, so many pose options. The head options are a little ordinary this time, with only kettle helmets and bare heads, but at least they have different expressions. The belts still look thin, but it's not a big deal. In summary, this is a great set, giving Chosun enjoyers more options. I wonder if they split the options across the sets to encourage you to buy all of them. That would make sense. Ironically, the Chosun commoner spearmen are the least common models of all, with very few depictions of paper armor before this. They wear a form of paper armor called hmmm. Arguably, small miniatures could have tried making this before, but I think they're actually going for jeon-bok. But with no surviving archaeological evidence of paper armor, we don't know what it looks like, so we can be broad with our interpretations. This is one of the few model depictions of paper armor, and it's the best I've seen, so Wargames Atlantic should again be praised for being innovators. This set appears most suited for late Chosun. The long back cape hanging behind the legs looks like jeon-bok, which has been tied back. This also matches the later style of the more cylindrical jeon-lip gat that some of the head sculpts wear, which changed in the early 18th century. So to contextualize these figures, they appear to be late Chosun troops. They could also maybe be mid-Chosun troops, reformed in the new Sok-o-gun system during the later stages of the Imjin War, but they were only a very small amount of troops, and you would have to avoid the cylindrical gats. The poses are pretty similar. The pants are very wrinkled, like unreasonably wrinkled. The combination of the paper armor with the late Chosun uniforms is an uncommon depiction, but it's plausible. This set also provides hang, pa, tridents, 2 long spear designs, and 1 short spear design. There are sword scabbards. The head variations are either pointy, jeon-lip, or kettle helmets, which is odd because the kettle helmet began to be phased out during late Chosun, so it would be more appropriate to give them the taller, Mongol-style gan-Ju helmet, if you had to give them anything. I mean, I guess it's nice to have more options, but it's not a fitting option for the time period that these miniatures are meant to represent. Technically, kettle helmets probably still existed in late Chosun, but they would be increasingly rare as time went on. I like their sandals. There's a lot of detail on their sandals. Otherwise, this is a pretty well-crafted, but restrictive set. It's clearly meant for late Chosun, while most of the other models are more appropriate for early to mid Chosun. And that's fine, but it means they kind of stand out. So yeah, so many exciting releases. A new dawn is rising for Chosun fans, 3-dimensional and printed. So many missing products have been created, and of such excellent quality in general. It's time to Chosun. It's Chosuning time! I give thanks to the Command Bunker for sponsoring this video on Patreon. He too makes Chosun Korean miniatures, and so we are all in this together, Chosuning all the time. So we just took a look at some of these Wargames Atlantic STLs, and they're great miniatures. I'm just so glad that these exist now. You know, I lost all hope that we'd see new, great Chosun Dynasty models, but we're getting great new ranges, and they're in STL, so like you can scale them, rescale them, depending on whatever format you play. You get a choice, which is amazing. So I think it's great for the hobby and for Joseon Dynasty collectors in general. So that's really good.